for that. A popular genre would be like merengue.
Peanut. Chip seedly peanut lump.
As well. My favorite drink is Morisanian. It's basically Irish juice mixed with evaporated milk and sugar, some lime, mix that up, great concoction.
Hispanic Heritage Month, presented by AAA Northeast.
Ooh, sorry, please.
PT10 is back. When we left off, we were in Jonesboro, Arkansas, where a suspect had managed to pull his handcuffs around to the front of his body.
When you're a man counting that my subject is not get crushed in the back.
Now look how aggressive the subject has become. This has got to be distracting to the officer. And sure enough, moments later, the officer loses control of his patrol car and flips his vehicle. The suspect actually just flew out the back window of the...
Are you guys here for the halftime show?
Oh, no. We're here to help people customize and save the Liberty Meal. Have you ever spotted the mistakes hiding in Peppa Pig? Well, today you're about to see them all. Like in the episode Princess Peppa, when Grandma Pig enters Peppa's room, we can notice the moon on the left panel of the window. But moments later, when she steps on a duck toy, the moon has now shifted to right panel. And finally, when she sits down on a chair, the moon has gone back to the left panel. Seriously, this moon needs to make up its mind. In the recently released episode Lava, we noticed a big slip-up from the animators. When Peppa is taking pictures of Mummy and Daddy Pig, look at the background. There's a yellow wall and a calendar. But when she prints the photo, it looks completely different. In the photo, they are standing in front of a green wall, whereas earlier, they were standing in front of yellow wall. Moving on, in the episode Emily Elephant, when the kids are running inside the classroom, look at their order. First it's Peppa, then Rebecca, and then Danny, Pedro, Susie, Zoe, and finally it's Candy Cat. But the mistake is, in the very next scene, it's Peppa who comes first, and after Peppa, it's Candy Cat. But how's this possible? Moments ago, we literally saw Candy Cat entering last. And that's not all. When the kids are showing Emily where to hang her coat, we can see a bunch of coats already hanging on the hanger. But their order is different now. The green and orange coat have swapped their places. In the episode, Very Hot Day, right at the beginning, Mummy Pig's nose clips through the door when she opens it. Now look at this scene carefully.
Because it's so hot, you need sun cream.
Did you notice anything weird? Where did Mummy Pig get the sunscreen from? If she was wearing normal clothes, we could have assumed she took it out of her pocket. But she's wearing a swimsuit. And surely there are no pockets in her swimsuit, right? Later, Mummy Pig connects the pipe to the faucet. But where did the faucet come from? At the beginning of the episode, there was nothing there. But now, there's a faucet. And that's not all. Later in the episode, Miss Rabbit arrives with her ice cream cart, and Mummy Pig gets ice cream for everyone. But George's ice cream literally melts within seconds, whereas other ice creams are fine. And as Mummy Pig is about to give Daddy Pig's ice cream to George, look at the stick in George's hand. As soon as he grabs the ice cream, the stick disappears. When they walk back down to the pool, we notice they all ate their ice cream, as their hands are empty. But later when they wake up Daddy Pig, he can be seen eating the same ice cream that George ate. Episode Lunch is filled with a bunch of mistakes. Right at the beginning, we can notice George standing right on the border of the vegetable garden and the grass. But when the scene zooms out, we can see he's now a few steps away from the garden. And that's not all. In this scene, Grandma Pig is making salad, while Peppa and George are beside her watching. Now, focus on Peppa here. As the scene is zooming out, we can see Peppa sliding towards George. It's like she's gliding through the floor. It happened quickly, but we managed to catch it. In the episode Canyon Country, as the pig family prepares to board Miss Rabbit's helicopter, take a close look at Mummy Pig's boots. You'll clearly see they are blue. However, just moments later, when she's descending the ladder onto the boat, her boots have magically changed color to purple. In the episode Traffic Jam, things don't quite add up. At the very start, we see an apple tree clearly standing on the right side of the screen. But just a few moments later, when Granny and Grandpa Pig roll their wheelbarrow outside, that apple tree suddenly vanishes. Even stranger, the tree that was originally on the left side seems to magically shift closer to the house. But that's not the only slip-up. When the pig family gets stuck in the traffic jam, pay close attention to Miss Rabbit's car. Her ears are so tall, they actually stick out through the roof of her vehicle. Now this next mistake is absolutely hilarious. In the episode, The Train Ride, Madame Gazelle takes the playgroup on a train ride where they must check off what they see on their activity sheets. But at the train station, Pedro loses his ticket. When Pedro is searching for his ticket, look carefully at the ground. We can clearly see there's nothing there. But moments later, when Madame Gazelle arrives, Zoe Zebra points towards the ground and there appears Pedro's train ticket. There's no way that ticket was originally there. Maybe Zoe Zebra had hid the ticket, and when Pedro was looking at Madame Gazelle, she threw his ticket on the ground. In the episode Desert Island, Grampy Rabbit, Grandad Dog, and Grandpa Pig go fishing. And if we look at the boat, we can notice there's a flagpole, steering wheel, and a gear lever. But the mistake is, when they sail the boat and reach their destination, we can notice that the gear lever has disappeared. But earlier, it was right there, and that's not all. Later in the episode, the boat sinks, and all three Grandpa get stuck on a deserted island. So, Daddy Dog comes to the rescue. When Daddy Dog is about to get on the boat, we can notice that the gear lever of his boat is on the edge, much farther from the steering wheel. But as soon as he gets on the boat, the gear lever has now shifted near the steering wheel. But wait, there's one more. Finally, when Daddy Dog and the kids find the granddads, the gear lever has now disappeared. Seriously, where do you even find boats like these? In the episode Mr. Potato's Christmas Show, all the students of Peppa's playgroup gather in a theater to see Mr. Potato's live show. Notice that Peppa is sitting in the last row with some of her friends, and in the row in front of Peppa's, we can see a brown cat. Now pay close attention because the mistake here is magical. Moments later, when Madame Gazelle says the show is about to start, the brown cat sitting in front of Peppa has now teleported all the way to the front row. And that's not all. Just as the show is about to start, Pedro Pony says he needs to go to the toilet. Now focus on these two characters sitting beside Freddy Fox. As soon as Pedro passes by the aisle to go to the toilet, the two seats are now empty. But seconds ago, they were occupied. Talking about the brown cat again. After Pedro goes to the toilet, scene zooms onto Peppa, but look who's sitting in front of her. The same cat that was sitting in the front row. After Pedro returns from the toilet, the scene zooms out again, and of course the cat magically goes back to sit in the front row. Seriously, what kind of trickery is going on here? Now this next mistake can be found in the episode Bouncy Ball.
Laundry can be really, especially if it sits in.
Here Peppa and her friends are playing football, and also we can notice 4 trees with fruits on them. Now look closely, because seconds later, all the fruits from the trees disappear into thin air. But seconds later, when Rebecca Rabbit scores a goal, the fruits can be seen again. Seriously, what's up with these fruits? In the episode Movie Night, Peppa and her friends go to Penny Bear's house to watch a movie. If we look at the sofa, we can see there are 3 cushions on it. But the mistake is, right when Penny Bear's parents set up the projector, the cushions have now disappeared. And the funny thing is, moments later, when the kids sit down to watch the movie, we can now see the 3 cushions again. But this time, Rebecca, Susie, and Gerald are sitting on it. Now let's look at a logical error. The episode The Carnival is a carnival of mistakes. At the beginning, Gerald Giraffe is seen in the crowd. But moments later, he's in the parade playing an electric guitar in a jazz. The episode Sit down to watch the movie, we can now see the 3 cushions again. But this time, Rebecca, Susie, and Gerald are sitting on it. Now let's look at a logical error. The episode The Carnival is a carnival of mistakes. At the beginning, Gerald Giraffe is seen in the crowd. But moments later, he's in the parade playing an electric guitar in a jazz band. And when the scene goes to Captain Dog and Danny Dog, Gerald is seen in the crowd again. And that's not all. When Mr. Potato blinked, his eyes became invisible, and his eyes aren't the only thing that disappeared. Mr. Potato has no arms in this scene. Look at the steering wheel. His hands aren't there, but moments later, his arms appears on the steering wheel. In the episode where Peppa's class goes camping, we also noticed a quite interesting continuity error. First, in the scene, we see Mrs. Wolf teaching the children how to create soap bubbles. The detail is that right after, in the next scene, the tools to make soap bubbles simply disappear from the hands of all the children. In the episode George's Friends, we notice another animation error related to objects that appear and disappear, and in this case, it's about the sand buckets that George and his friend were playing with. We can see that they are there close to the children. Then Peppa Pig start a little argument to defend each of their brothers in the game. And notice that when the image expands again, the 2 sand buckets have disappeared as if they had never been there. Did the boys throw them in the air while none of us were looking at them? So, the next time you're watching Peppa Pig, keep your eyes wide open. You might just spot a mistake we all missed.
Picture this, a phone with a pro camera that uses AI to help you take.
Peppa Pig is a show filled with a lot of mysteries, and in today's video we're going to talk about some of them. As we all know, there are talking vegetables in Peppa Pig, and their existence by itself is already a big mystery. On top of that, we've got Super Potato, who basically is the Superman of Peppa Pig's universe. So, where does Super Potato's powers come from? This question is really intriguing. Whenever we see Super Potato coming on the scene, he almost always appears flying from the sky. And unlike other talking vegetables like Mrs. Carrot, who uses a thick rope to simulate that she is flying, which even the children in the audience notice, Super Potato really has the ability to fly. Moreover, he also has unreal strength, as we see when he manages to save Mr. Potato from his car where he got stuck. So the big question is, where did these powers of this talking potato come from? Was he born with them, or did he acquire them over time? One of the popular Peppa Pig theory states that the talking vegetables were the results of some sort of scientific experiment. But if they were really the result of an experiment, then why didn't other vegetables get the superpower? We can't say for sure if this is true or not, but surely this is still one of the biggest mysteries in Peppa Pig. Aunt Dottie is probably the most mysterious character in Peppa Pig. So, where does Aunt Dottie live? Peppa and George have an aunt named Dottie. We know she is their aunt, but we aren't sure if she is Daddy Pig's sister or Mummy Pig's sister. What we do know is that Dottie doesn't know Peppa and George very well, at least not from what they remember. Also, she lives very far away from England, so far that when she sends them a gift, which is a shiny wheeled horse, she has to write a letter explaining where she is from. This letter makes it clear that she is in a distant country. We still don't know exactly where Aunt Dottie lives, but we can tell you where she definitely does not live. First, she does not live in England, since that is where Peppa and George already live. She also does not live in France, which is the country next to England. This is because when Peppa's family goes to France, they meet Delphine and her family, not Aunt Dottie. The same thing happens with the USA. When Peppa's family goes to Hollywood to receive an award and meet Super Potato, they travel all across America. But Aunt Dottie is not mentioned or seen. Some fans think Aunt Dottie might live in Russia, which is a very big country, even bigger than the USA. This idea comes from an episode where Madame Gazelle plays a game about different countries. In this episode, George wears a special Russian outfit that could have been a gift from Aunt Dottie for International Day. This seems like a good guess, but the people who make the show haven't confirmed it yet. Going back to the potatoes in Peppa Pig, there's another mystery surrounding them. Are Super Potato and Mr. Potato brothers? This is because the two characters are almost completely identical. So much so that many even thought that they were the same person until the episode where Super Potato saves Mr. Potato. So are these potatoes related? In the show, we have seen that the characters who are very similar, like Daddy Pig and Uncle Pig, are brothers. They have small differences in their beards that distinguish them. However, in the case of the two luminous characters we're talking about, even their mustaches are identical, with only their outfits differing. So, the possibility arises that makes perfect sense. Are Super Potato and Mr. Potato twin brothers? Another popular mystery in Peppa Pig has to do with George. And some of you might have guessed it already. The mystery is George adopted? As we know, the full name of main character of the show is Peppa Pig, and she is referred to as such by several characters in the show. However, when it comes to her brother, we practically never hear anyone referring to him as George Pig. Similarly, the parents of the two always have their last names spoken when they are mentioned, always being called Daddy Pig and Mommy Pig. So, does George not have the last name Pig? If that's not his last name, then what would it be? George's last name is never mentioned in the show. But in the episode Edmund Elephant's Birthday, Peppa's family receives a mail with an invitation for George, inviting him to attend the birthday party of Edmund Elephant. In the invitation, they refer to him by his full name and use the surname Pig at the end, George Pig. However, if you stop to analyze, perhaps Edmund's family simply assumed that George had the last name Pig and put it on the invitation. This idea is supported by the fact that we never hear anyone in his family calling him by the last name Pig. If we look closely at the show Peppa Pig, we can see a fun pattern with the names of the characters. Almost all the kids have names where the first letter of their first name matches the first letter of their last name, which also tells us what kind of animal they are. For example, take Edmund Elephant. His last name is Elephant, and both his first name and last name start with the letter E. The same thing happens with his sister, Emily Elephant. There are other characters that fit this pattern too. For instance, Peppa Pig has both her first and last name starting with the letter P. Then we have the twin sisters, Peggy and Pandora Panda, who also start with P, just like Peppa. And we can't forget Pedro Pony, whose name follows the same rule. And in addition to the characters we've already talked about, we can also look at the entire rabbit family. This family includes the two youngest members, who are named Rose and Rob, and their older siblings, Rebecca and Richard. All of them share the last name Rabbit. Other examples of this naming pattern include Susie Sheep and Danny Dog, who also have matching initials for their first and last names. However, Peppa's little brother is named George Pig, and that's where things get a bit different. His initials are G and P, which don't match like the other characters. If George had always been part of the Pig family and they picked his name, they might have chosen a name that also starts with P. Of course, it's possible that George was adopted and already had his name from the orphanage, which would explain why it doesn't fit the pattern. But we also have other characters who don't follow the same rule, like Peppa and George's cousins, Chloe and Alexander. But so far, we haven't heard anything from the show's creators about this mystery. Mrs. Rabbit is one of the well-known characters in Peppa Pig, and she's well known for having a lot of jobs. But you should know that there is more than one Miss Rabbit. So far, no one knows how many Miss Rabbits are there exactly, and many fans get a bit mixed up and think that Mrs. Rabbit is actually Rebecca's mom. But that's not correct. In reality, Mrs. Rabbit is the aunt of Peppa's friend because she is the twin sister of Mummy Rabbit. This becomes clear in the episode called Mummy Rabbit's Bump. In that episode, we see both Mrs. Rabbit and Mummy Rabbit at the hospital. Mrs. Rabbit is working as a nurse, while Mummy Rabbit is there to have her twins. Speaking of twins, this brings up another question.
Oh my
Just how
god!
many rabbit sisters are there?
Another
We know that
one!
rabbits tend to have a lot of babies, like Mummy and Daddy Rabbit, who have 4 children. Rebecca, Richard, and the twins,
I knew
Rose and
Gypsy
Rob.
do this.
But what about Mrs. Rabbit? How many sisters does she have? Interestingly, when the pig family travels to France, they meet a character who looks just like Mrs. Rabbit and does many of the same jobs. This French version of Mrs. Rabbit, who calls herself Mademoiselle Léal, which means Mrs. Rabbit in French, is a souvenir seller, a helicopter pilot, and even a professional rescuer. But wait, there's more. It seems that Mrs. Rabbit might have other sisters in the United States too. When Peppa and her family go to Hollywood, after finding a golden ticket to be in Super Potato's movie, they arrive in New York. They actually fly there in a plane piloted by Mrs. Rabbit. As soon as they land, they meet another Mrs. Rabbit, but this time, she's American. Just like the other rabbits, she does many jobs. She's a taxi driver, an elevator operator, and even sells ice cream. As Peppa and her family travel on their way to Hollywood, they keep running into more Mrs. Rabbits in different places. This makes us wonder, does this rabbit family really spread all over the world? Or do all
really
the
hard
rabbits
one.
just happen to look and sound the same? One of the most
Calm
popular
down,
Peppa Pig
baby
theories
girl.
is about the original Peppa Pig being replaced by a fake one. This theory started after the creators of Peppa Pig released a family photo of Pig Family. Anyway, we can see the whole Pig family gathered. As we know, the Pig family consists of 4 members: Daddy Pig, Mummy Pig, Peppa, and George. But in the image, there are 5 family members present instead of 4. When we look at the window on the ground floor of the family's house, we can see a 3rd pig looking at the family members outside. To this day, this is something that the creators of Peppa still haven't explained well, and it has been puzzling all fans in a disturbing way. After all, is she trapped? How many Peppas are there? Moving on, now let's talk about another popular theory, and the theory is concerned with none other than Madame Gazelle. In the episode Pumpkin Party, Madame Gazelle strangely did not have a reflection in the mirror, which was even noticed by the narrator. She also stated in this episode that Susie's vampire costume reminded her of the olden days. This caused people to theorize that Madame Gazelle was a vampire. Also, in the episode Madame Gazelle's House, there is an old Christmas tree next to her house, causing it to be wonky. When Mr. Bull climbs the tree to check if there are any living beings, he finds bats. Madame Gazelle says that her friends the bats have reminded her of the old days. Also, since the Christmas tree is very large, and Madame Gazelle had owned it since it was a little tree, this implies that Madame Gazelle could be immortal. These 2 episodes have spooked people out, and show in a subtle way that the Peppa Pig franchise is darker than we may have expected, and that there is indeed a backstory. The predators in the shows are
Oh
secretly
my
carnivorous.
god!
As
That
we
was
know,
way
in
too
Peppa Pig,
high
we
up,
have different
Gypsy.
animals that are predators in
Holy
real life.
shit!
For example, when the children visit the zoo, they find out that the 2 workers who care for the animals are named Mr. Lion
so high
and
up
Mrs.
before.
Crocodile. The kids, being so innocent, aren't scared at all. In contrast, Madame Gazelle feels more and more afraid as she realizes that these wild animals are so close to her. This shows that the teacher knows exactly what these animals are capable of. Another example from the show highlights how some animals behave like their real-life counterparts. In one scene, Daddy Pig and Daddy Wolf decide to go on a picnic, but first, they have to cross a river in a boat. As they travel, Daddy Wolf keeps mentioning how hungry he is, and looks at Daddy Pig in a rather unusual way. Although he might just be eyeing the picnic basket, the context suggests he has a much different idea in mind, like wanting to eat the soft and gentle Daddy Pig. But since this is a children's cartoon, that doesn't actually happen. This raises an interesting question. How do these predator animals manage to control their natural instincts and not act on their wild impulses? Maybe they don't. Maybe they do secretly eat meat. But they are just pretending to be friendly, so that it is easier for them to hunt these animals. As we know, all the houses and all the constructions and buildings that there are in Peppa Town are on top of the hills. The reason for this is to be safe from the flood. Since Peppa Town is prone to extreme flooding, as happened in the episode, The Biggest Muddy Puddle in the World. And if it weren't for the fact that the houses were so high, it would no longer be called Peppa Town. It would be called Peppa Lake. As we know, in the episode, basically the entire town was affected by the flood. But a mysterious thing about this episode was what happened to Rebecca Rabbit's house. As we know, Rebecca Rabbit lives in a burrow, so Rebecca's home should have been destroyed. The only way they could have survived is to have a waterproof house, which I doubt. But maybe Miss Rabbit knows some magic, and might have intervened to save their house from flooding, because after all, the characters do not age in Peppa Pig, which leads us to our next theory. The characters age. Most of you may not know this, but Peppa Pig was released in 2004, making it 20 years old. But so far,
You're on pretty
we haven't
early,
seen a
actually.
single